Hello, my name is Dylan Witter, and I chose schema theory and ESL students as my topic for the final project this semester. And I did this because I feel schema plays a large role in helping students that are learning English as a second language to comprehend things and topics that they may not be familiar with in the classroom. Some texts are very different from their cultures and they may not be able to relate as well as someone who speaks English as a first language. So I hope you enjoy it and let's begin. So, schema theory, what is it? Put simply, schema theory offers an explanation of how students use their prior knowledge to understand and engage with a text. While schema theory has existed in the field of psychology since the 1930s, it was first adapted to the field of reading and writing by Rumelhart, Carroll, and Hudson in the 1970s and 80s. The theory relies on students' prior knowledge, which is constructed in a top-down, hierarchical manner called schemata. The schemata is broken down into three categories: formal, content, and finally, linguistic schema. Formal schema refers to a student's understanding of how different genres of a text are organized and presented to the reader. Content schema describes the prior knowledge an individual may possess about what happens within a certain context. For example, Xu Yang, in her article Schema Theory in Reading, explains that an individual's content schema for going to a restaurant would include their knowledge about services, menus, ordering dishes, and paying the bill. Cultural schema typically falls within this realm because content schema is largely culture specific. Lastly, linguistic schema refers to a student's knowledge of vocabulary and grammar, and it represents the basic building block for constructing meaning. The implications for ESL students. A student's process for interpreting a text is directed by the understanding that every input is linked to existing schema. For sufficient comprehension to take place, a student's schema must be completely compatible with the material being communicated. This notion results in two modes of processing information: bottom-up and top-down. Bottom-up processing occurs when specific data is identified and compounded to form a more complex understanding of the text. The top-down approach occurs when a student makes a general prediction of the meaning and then searches for information to fit their partially developed understanding. Aware of these different ways of processing information, and according to Patricia Carroll, to the extent that students are successful in activating appropriate schema against which they try to give a text a consistent interpretation, we may say that they have comprehended the text. For ESL students, reading difficulties may be the result of a student developing an interpretation of a text that is ultimately very different from the one intended by the author. It can also be said that these students may not be effectively using their bottom-up or top-down approaches for processing information. Due to the overwhelming connection between students' schema and their interpretation of a text, it is vital for teachers to provide an instructional framework that is inclusive and accommodating of students' diverse backgrounds. The effects of cultural familiarity on reading comprehension. The study conducted by Ismail Ertin and Salim Razi can give us further insight into the impact of schema, particularly cultural, on ESL students' ability to comprehend what they read. According to their article, The Effects of Cultural Familiarity on Reading Comprehension, ESL readers tend to deal with both micro-level reader-driven features such as pattern recognition, letter identification, and lexical access, and macro-level reader-driven features such as activation of prior knowledge and monitoring comprehension that can overload their working memory, which is limited. They argue that by activating the background knowledge that readers bring to a text, they can allocate more attentional space for textual analysis and interpretation. Essentially, by helping students to avoid recrafting a story in their mind to better align with their cultural background, teachers can provide a more engaging interaction with the text that leads to better comprehension. The findings of this study supported Ertin and Razi's hypothesis and found that by modifying text to better fit a student's schema, students' comprehension was vastly improved regardless of the text pairing with pre-reading, while reading, and post-reading activities. More research. An empirical study of schema theory and its role in reading comprehension. Although Yan Mei Liu's quantitative study focuses on schema of EFL students, or English as Foreign Language, and its ability to improve comprehension, her results still hold implications for schema theory's role in ESL instruction. As seen by Table 4.1 at the bottom of the PowerPoint slide, the experimental group of this research, having been given schema related to the story prior to reading, not only answered comprehension questions more accurately, but provided much greater elaboration in their recollections. The control group also consistently distorted the details of the text. In Liu's words, in the absence of the relevant schema, readers can only try to transfer information from working memory to permanent memory through rote learning, and suffer from the brain overload discussed before. This research reflects a kind of brain-to-computer analogy that can wreak havoc on an ESL student's ability to comprehend what they're reading. If we think of the brain's working memory as RAM in a computer, and permanent memory as hard drive memory, we see that RAM can become overloaded by running too many programs, which can cause a computer's speed and efficiency to suffer. However, in the case of student comprehension, this speed and efficiency is substituted for the ability to read and understand. Classroom strategies. So with what we've learned about schema theory and its ability to improve student comprehension, what strategies can we implement in the classroom to get the most from our ESL students? As we've already discussed, the focus of comprehension is often on the text rather than the reader, and this can lead to a disconnect between a student's understanding and an author's message. One of the ways to avoid this and to help students get in the frame of mind for a text is having them participate in pre-reading activities like the Experience Text Relationship Method, Langer's Pre-Reading Plan, making predictions, and identifying the text structure. In using the Experience Text Relationship Method, a teacher would ask their students to express their own experiences about a topic prior to reading. During this segment of the lesson, a teacher might read short sections of a text and then question students about the content. Have they ever had that happen to them? How did it make them feel? Etc. This strategy does require teachers to be careful about choosing passages that won't elicit misunderstandings and being open to clearing up any confusion students express. Langer's pre-reading plan is a 3-step assessment which, like the Experience Text Relationship Method, uses discussion to help define terminology and clear up potential misunderstandings. This strategy begins with the teacher introducing the class to a key word, concept, or picture and asking students to share their initial understanding of it. The teacher then asks questions like, "What made you think of that?" to help students become aware of the associations they're making. Finally, students can discuss how their associations with a subject may have changed during the discussion. Inferencing can be another great way to help students become aware of the associations they are making prior to reading. Students are free to share their opinions based on their experiences, and in turn can help those with less schema to become more comfortable with a given topic. Finally, identifying the text structure is a simple but effective way to prepare students for what to expect while reading a given text. Simply by explaining the genre of a future text, students can begin to brainstorm about what to expect. This avoids students being caught off guard by the way a text is formatted, and instead focusing their working memory on comprehension and engagement. Well, that's the end of my presentation. Thanks for watching. I hope you learned a little bit about schema theory and how it impacts ESL students and how you can impact ESL students' learning using schema theory. If you want more information about activities to use that can help with schema theory and incorporating into your classroom, I highly suggest the top article in my bibliography, Schema Theory-Based Pre-Reading Task, a Neglected Essential in the ESL Reading Classroom. Again, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed.